So for years, I have worked with different organizations, school districts in South Carolina specifically. And I would say it's a pretty forward-thinking state education-wise. Now, again, my view is I've been there a couple places, but I've met some really incredible educators from there. I've worked with some really incredible school districts. And like why and it's not to say there's no issues. There's not to say there's no like things that could be better in education or anything like that. But I'm when we were talking before, I know you see similar things. Why do you think that is? Like, what do you think is kind of driving that specifically in the state of South Carolina? That's actually helping to support staff, helping to you really kind of push the boundaries of what's possible in the state for education.
Well, for one thing, our size really helps us and is a benefit, I think. I told you I worked in a small rural district for my whole career. I've
Hmm.
worked in two different places that were similar, but really neighboring with one another. And just the opportunity to make those connections and build that network. We're small enough that just before we got on, we were talking about a colleague
Yes.
that you and I both know. I'll give a little shout out for Sean Clark.
All right.
Um,
Just wait,
'Cause
Sean, if you're listening. There you go. There you go. You get that.
she and I used to work in neighboring districts in similar roles, and we partnered all the time to do some professional learning opportunities for our teachers and our leaders. We were actually part of the National Learning Forward. Um, I can't even remember. It's the
Academy.
Academy. Thank you, Jason. I completely drew a blank because I got so excited talking about Sean. But we were part of the Learning Forward Academy together, and that was a 2-year cohort process. And I have multiple people like that across the state geographically that I could shout out to that really helped and supported me in my role. And I just think that happens in our state, whether you're a teacher or an administrator or an instructional coach. And being able to leverage those relationships and learn from one another helps us to stay connected, but also do better for our kids.
It's actually funny. If people didn't hear, obviously, the prior to recording, I literally just said this first name from some other guy. It's like didn't matter where they're from. They just knew everybody. And I do want to point out one thing, Angie, that I think is really probably why you and I connected so easily when we do this. So if I was to ask certain people, like, what is the thing that's holding you back? And some people would say it's because we're so small. Or some places would be like, hey, we're too big, right? So it's like, hey, everyone's gonna have like you're either too big or you're too small. But hey, big, you have maybe access to more resources than smaller communities. So you start looking for the leverage. We're small, like we're closer knit community, we learn from each other. So I think that's a really important thing is that sometimes what people would see as the detriment is actually can be used to your advantage if you think that way. And so I really appreciated that answer because it's like, I've literally got, hey, we can't do this because we're small. It's like, no, actually we can do this because we're small, which is like a totally different way of thinking. So I just really, it really hit home with me when you mentioned that, because that's not where I thought you were going with it.